These in our anthropology series. So today we are going to start with our weekly answer writing series, because a lot of you guys were telling me that I should start a weekly answer writing series where we should discuss how we should structure the questions, and then we'll discuss the PYQs and all. So before I start, this is my Telegram channel, guys. Here we also do the daily answer writing and all of that. So if you want to join that, because a lot of students are not writing questions these days, so if you want to write questions, if you want updates on my videos, etc., so you please join in my Telegram channel. So I have two models before we start our weekly answer writing series. Basically the thing is that definitely we are going to discuss the previous year questions, and I will tell you how you should structure those questions and all of that. That is one thing that we are going to do in this series. The second thing that we are going to do in this series is that whatever we are unable to cover in our in our already anthropology lecture series, because there the syllabus is confined, and we are trying to contain ourselves to that syllabus. But then a lot of times questions in UPSC come from outside, or you can say outside that confined syllabus, right? So we will try and tackle those questions also, because अगर UPSC ने एक बारी कोई चीज़ पूछी है, it is likely that UPSC can repeat at least its questions, or not the question in the same form but some other form, right? So we can discuss those questions so that वो एक dynamic aspect भी we try and cover. And it's not see, the point is, if we go on doing the same thing, like same material in the anthropology lecture series also and here also, so it is not going to make it very fun. So we will try and take the questions that are from the syllabus, that are from outside the syllabus, and we will try and tackle those questions as well, right? So the perspective from which I'm starting this series is also to gain knowledge, to understand how to write the answers, and then add a little new material to what we have already done in the anthropology lecture series, right? So with this, let's get started. So today I've picked up a very simple question. This is from 2020 paper. The question is human rights and cultural relativism. Now you might think that this is a very easy topic, but today when we'll do it, you will understand no, I have added a lot of new dimensions to it, and also why, from what perspective this question has been asked. This is not been covered by us in the anthropology lecture series, but then cultural relativism, how important dimension it is to anthropology, right? So it is not justified to believe कि हम cultural relativism को superficially पढ़ लेंगे and we'll be done with it. We can't read cultural relativism superficially. We have to delve deep into the concept, because it is very important concept in anthropology, right? So we have picked up this topic, which is a 10 marker compulsory questions. So many times such questions will come where you have been given two words. First word is human rights and second word is cultural relativism. Okay, so now how you will think that, okay, now how to structure this answer and how to write this answer. But the point is, this question has been time and again asked by UPSC. This was asked, I guess, back in 2010 or 11. I'm forgetting it. I think it's 10, I guess. Okay, so whatever it is, 10 or 11, this question is one of the favorite topics. Cultural relativism is very favorite topic of UPSC. So you need to prepare yourself deep into this topic, and it was asked with human rights itself. That means if there is a certain connection between the two, you need to understand that, right? So with this we'll start. So first thing you need to know is this is a compulsory question. That means you can't leave it, right? And isme mostly you have to write 2 pages answer, right? 150 words. So now we will try and understand what all material we have for this, and then how to structure it or write it, right? So let's get start with it. Okay, so basically, if I have to tell you, there is two words, human rights and cultural relativism. So you can start by establishing a connection. That could be the first way you can start the question, that you establish some kind of a connection between human rights and cultural relativism. Or B, you can write the definition of cultural relativism, and by that you can establish a connection with human rights. Now everybody knows the definition of cultural relativism, that is, okay, so basically we all have understood what is cultural relativism. The concept was popularized by Franz Boas. He was a big name in this, and it was his idea of what we today know as cultural relativism. So basically he says it was a reaction against the so-called ethnocentric views of that time, right? That means the classicals or all others. Now this is just for understanding. हमने इसको कैसे लिखना है, we'll go to that part also, just understand for now. So it was the reaction against ethnocentric views. That means how you view other cultures with your own prism or perspective, right? With your own culture's prism, you can say, right? Cultures or society's prism. That means whatever you think you are doing is right and what others are doing is wrong. Okay? Because you are judging them based on your own perception, right? So this concept you can also say was very Western ideology dominated, because the first people who started who got first industrialized and who got first, so to say, civilized in their own perspective. So they had started this white man's burden and how they have to cure the whole society, the pan world, the far easterners and all of that, because they thought that we were savage, we were barbaric, right? So that means जो concept है ना ethnocentrism का, that came from the Western ideology. That means what was kept as the pedestal of being the perfect thing, it was the Western ideology, right? So cultural relativism came as a counter or a critique to the so-called ethnocentric views of the Victorian society. So now you've understood this thing. So you can start your answer by writing the definition of cultural relativism, and then you can say, because cultural relativism promotes or is a counter to ethnocentric views, it promotes equality amongst humans, right? So that is how you can just create a connection between the two. So आप ऐसे start कर सकते हो that cultural relativism is an idea. It was a counter to the very prevalent ethnocentric views of the Victorian society, or the value-driven Western society's ideology being imposed on the other cultures. So the concept was popularized by Franz Boas, okay? And then many others, many other cultures who believed that you should not look at one culture with one perspective, but rather you should look at a culture with its own unique settings, with its own socio-cultural background. ठीक है ना? So this could be a starting, and then it helps to promote equal human rights for all, because all humans are equal, right? So then this could be one. The second could be, you can quote the debate between the universalist and cultural relativist. Now when did this come in? Because जब Western ideology was countered with other people such as cultural relativist, so then this debate sparked off. So debate क्या है? Universalists believe that same kind of human rights should apply to everyone. That means beyond cultures, beyond human rights एक ऐसी चीज है. If we have to talk about human rights, what are human rights? Human rights is something which is very basic rights. That is why it is called human rights, because it should be very basic. It should be free for all. Everybody should be able to enjoy certain basic rights. जैसे we have also incorporated in our constitution what we call as fundamental rights, right? or the Bill of Rights of USA. What are those? They are the rights that every person should enjoy, right? So universalists say that, you know, regardless of cultures, regardless of societies, there are certain rights that every human should enjoy, right? अगर हम इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में एक बेसिक ह्यूमन राइट्स की बात कर सकते हैं, तो why not at world level? Why not at world level? World में भी तो everywhere there are humans and they should enjoy certain basic rights, right? So universalist is talking about this only, that there should be certain basic human rights available to all. But then cultural relativists critique them, saying that okay, human rights should be available to all, but it should take into account the cultural differences. That means you cannot make a very scientific basis on how are you going to categorize this. What are basic human rights? How are you going to categorize it? Because you know, अगर हम Western and Eastern ideology ही ले लें, it is very different to each other. Western and non-Western या Eastern, you can say, ideologies are very, very different to each other. So now how will you come at a common ground that this is what, you know, basic human rights should have, right? Because everybody makes an ideology based on its own cultures, in its own society. So how are you going to take that culture, society out of your perspective when you're making these basic human rights? So you can say that the question was human rights and cultural relativism. So you can also write about this debate that, you know, human rights and cultural relativism is connected to each other through the debate between the universalist and cultural relativist. Because if you want to enjoy human rights, you need to have cultural relativism. That means you need to respect the diversity, as well as then you can't even have a lot of cultural relativity. Now I will make you understand what I'm saying. You might not be able to understand it now because we have not got deep into the concept, right? So basically, universalism talks about human rights and cultural relativism talks about that culture's own ideas, culture's own diversity should be respected while framing the human rights. So this is the connection. We have started it. Now, you can give that there is no ultimate. Cultural relativists believe that there is no ultimate standard of good or bad. Okay? Every judgment about right or wrong is a product of society. So how are you going to take that judgment, that value driven perspective of yours out while forming the human rights, right? So, and also they believe that whatever human rights we have, right, they were developed by the Western countries and were based on the Western morality. That means they also criticize that whatever human rights we are talking about today, right, including the, you can say, the Declaration of Human Rights by the UN, right, even that is very Western ideology. That means they were not even they were not the ideology of the other cultures, because at the time when these Declaration of Human Rights had come in by Ashley Montego and all, many cultures were still the colonies, right? They were still in slavery. ठीक है, आपको भी पता है कि अमेरिका में भी फॉर एग्जाम्पल ह्यूमन राइट्स आए, ठीक है, बिल ऑफ राइट्स आए, but blacks were given rights much later, women were given rights much later, right? So you can believe that these things, these human rights were the product of Western countries and their morality, right? So if we have not contributed to it, why should it be imposed on us, right? So this is how you can build a connection. You can start that human rights and cultural relativism has a lot of interplay. They cannot be taken out of each other, because, you know, if we need to enjoy our human rights, we need to acknowledge cultural relativism, but not so much that it kills the human rights itself. Now I will tell you how. There are two things that we are going to do in this. How can human rights be protected with cultural relativism, and how it is going to be how human rights are going to get violated with cultural relativism. So now you can understand that जैसे हम बोलते हैं excess of everything is bad. So excess of neutrality would also turn out to be bad. That means ज़्यादा cultural relativism will also turn out to be bad. ठीक है? And not at all having no cultural relativism is also going to be bad. So this is the perspective. This is how we have established a connection between human rights and cultural relativism. Now let's look at both the perspectives. Now this perspective of how human rights can be protected with the help of cultural relativism we have studied more or less, because हमने इसके बारे में पहले भी बात की है that it builds tolerance towards other cultures. ठीक है, it helps in promoting peace. It reduces the tension and stresses between different culture. For example, today there is so much of religious fundamentalism, right? People are extremely getting intolerant towards other culture. You can quote many example in this. You can say the Hindu-Muslim unity, right? Partition of India was a outcome of the religious fundamentalism, right? Then you can quote the example of Rohingyas, then you can quote the Kurds or the Uyghur Muslims, right? So what is this? When we try and not understand the other cultures, right, then these problems are bound to happen. Also, intolerance is there. Then you can quote many examples of caste ka quote kar sakte ho, right? The untouchability, believing that if they do certain menial jobs, then they are people who are not clean people, right? Untouchability क्यों है? Because we believe, we have a perspective that they are not clean, right? So these ideas, अगर हम cultural relativism रखें, we can counter these ideas, है ना? We can counter the idea of racism, because race is a very it's a social construct. Different color, that means white or black or brown, cannot define that who is superior or inferior. It's just the ideology that is attached to it makes it being inferior or superior. Because Western culture, they have a slightly whiter body type, right? So they believe that the black culture, because they are underdeveloped, or so called, in their perspective, underdeveloped, so they are inferior. But it is not like that. Then attaching value to different body types, for example, lean body type is considered more desirable. Why should it be so, right? We are stereotyping ourselves to one thing, right? So cultural relativism बोलता है enjoy the diversity that you have, ठीक है ना? You should not look at things with a very narrow prism. Rather, you should look at the things with a very wider prism. Then इसमें you can quote the moral dilemma of abortion. Moral dilemma that comes with abortion, right? The recent debate that has sparked off between pro-life versus pro-choice, right? What is pro-life? That means you say कि when you get pregnant, you have a life inside you, and it is morally wrong to take that life away, right? And pro-choice is, it is still your body, it is still your choice whether you want to have that child or not. Also because how economically stable you are, how well you are placed in the society, how well you can take care of that child. So that is your choice, right, to have that child or not. But this debate, because this debate again has come from a very Western ideology, because in Christianity it was believed that to abort a child is morally wrong. You can't take away your life. So pro-life concept वहाँ से आता है. So इन सब चीज़ों को, to understand these things rationally, we can say cultural relativism is very important, because it tries and builds tolerance, it tries and builds rationality, and you start looking at things with other perspective, which is not your own but theirs. So you start to enjoy that diversity. So abortion should not be considered a moral decision, right? It should also be looked at the prism of the person who's having it, right? So just saying it absolutely that abortion is a morally wrong decision to take, ऐसा नहीं होता, right? What if you have a genetically your child has a rare disease, right? So then will you give that child that miserable life? Do you want to give that child a miserable life? So all of these things should also be looked upon, okay? Then beef eating by non-Hindus. Just because Hindus don't eat non-vegetarian or beef because they believe that cow is sacred to them, but then other cultures believe in other ways, right? So you should look at their culture not from your perspective but theirs also. Then cousin marriages, right? Then the concept of nudity or nudism. See, these are just examples which you have to quote, that how human rights can be protected with cultural relativism. For example, nudity, the concept of nudity is what? See, in Western cultures, you can wear a very short skirt, or you can wear clothes that are relatively, so to say, revealing in a way. I don't want to use this term, but then how should I make you understand? Versus the Middle East countries where you need to wear the burqas. Debate has also sparked off because, you know, how you should dress is your choice. It is not their choice, right? So even if you want to wear a burqa or a short skirt, right, it should not be made a cultural decision that Middle East का culture ऐसा है तो you should wear a burqa, और Western culture ऐसा है तो you cannot wear a burqa. Attaching socio-cultural values to things like that make it very complex. So these things should be your choice and not made it a very culturally determined choice, because what women want to wear should be their own preference and should not be defined by others, right? So these kind of concepts. Then squatting toilets or toilets with no covers or lids. See, this can be a hygiene shock for somebody who comes from a Western culture, because they might not have those squatting toilets. Again, attaching a inferior value to it, saying that okay, squatting toilets are not very superior, or it is not Western, because it's not Western ideology, तो ये गलत बात है. You cannot say that, okay? So these are certain examples you can put, that human right builds tolerance, it builds harmony and peace among cultures. You can understand other people with their perspective, okay? And these are certain examples that you can quote. Now coming to a very interesting part, how culture relativism violates human rights. So now in this, I will tell you, this thing starts from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, where UN tried to avoid radical universalism of human rights to not look biased towards Western values and give primacy to individual cultures over UDHR. Now you need to understand, when UN took out this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it did not make it very forceful in the sense that it tried to avoid as much Western influence as it can, so to have a larger acceptance. That means if non-Western cultures had to accept a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it should, from their perspective, it should have the acceptance from those cultures, and that will come when you will respect their cultures. That means जब UN ने अपना ह्यूमन डिक्लेरेशन दिया ऑन ह्यूमन राइट्स, उसने बोला कि these are the basic principles that should be avoided. That means there should be equality, there should be all these basic rights that should be provided to people, but then individual culture, individual societies can shape or frame their rights in their own way, in their own perspective of their own cultural settings. जैसे हमने भी अपने फंडामेंटल राइट्स में a lot of things we have taken from the Universal Declaration and a lot of things we have not taken because हमें लगता था we were a society of different culture, different languages. तो whatever suited us हमने उसमें से pick किया and whatever didn't suit us or didn't suit us at that time we did not pick it up, right? So they left that room of cultural diversity, ठीक है, so that to garner a lot of acceptance from different cultures. So उसका result क्या हुआ? It resulted in violation of human rights. Now how? I will tell you. जैसे कि there are punishments even till today in many cultures which are you can say barbaric in a way, ठीक है, कैसे? Now जैसे फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन में हमने पढ़ा था गिलेटिन होता था, राइट? Today there is capital punishment. Even today there is so much of debate ki whether capital punishment is a good thing or not, right? So these all ways कि जैसे इन मिडल ईस्ट अभी भी बहुत टाइम्स में बड़े हार्श पनिशमेंट्स मिलते हैं कि स्टोन्स से आपको स्टोन से मारेंगे अगर इफ एनीथिंग रॉन्ग is happening which is against their culture. So these kind of punishments in Islamic states, ठीक है, it is against human rights. At least if you have done anything wrong, anything which is against your culture, your constitution, your law, but then also you have a dignity, na? You have a right to die also with dignity, not like कि पत्थरबाजी हो रही है, right? So these are the ideas. Just to make it cultural relativist, सोचो कि हमने बोला कि we need to accept the cultures and their own ways also, but human rights तो violate हो गया ना, human right तो violate हो गया. To die with dignity, to have a life of dignity, that got violated. Then limited political rights of in China due to ideology, because they believe they have an ideology that you should have an authoritarian regime, right from Confucius to many others. They have believed that there should be a person, not person, but there should be a group that should control the majority, right? Or when elders speak, younger should not interrupt, right? So ऐसे ideology पे, when limited political rights even till today China में, it's not a democratic nation, right? It's not a democratic nation in its truest sense. तो फिर then human rights are getting violated. Then the caste system, even we have brought in fundamental rights, but then also there is prevalence of caste system. In USA also there is racial classification despite Bill of Rights. That means these things have only got onto paper but not in practice, because we still make distinctions based on caste, based on race. So this has obstructed human rights, ठीक है, because we have become cultural relativists. That means we try to ignore things because we want to give cultures their own freedom also. We, in the guise of freedom to the cultures, we have taken freedom of humans and their human rights. So we have other examples also, like female genital mutilation. Just because we are saying कि cultural relativism is right, we are not questioning many cultures that do female genital mutilation, which comes from a religio-cultural ideology. So now, isn't it a dichotomy between religion and female rights? Is female rights more important than religion, or religion more important than female rights? This is the fine balance that we have to achieve via cultural relativism and human rights concept. This is the whole question, that whether you understand or not, क्योंकि human rights and cultural relativism is joined by a thread. Now that thread you need to know कि it will promote human rights also, and sometimes it will come in the way of promoting human rights. It will obstruct. जैसे कि there are Middle Eastern countries where the treatment of women is it's not as par to men. because they are a little patriarchal. Not only they, but we are also patriarchal society. But there, there are many examples as small as that women aren't free and they must obey to the sexist social norms. For example, if they want to work some other place or they want to travel, they need a written permission from their husband or male guardian. Why? If a woman is employed, if a woman is not a minor, why should she have a permission of her husband? Whereas अगर husband को जाना है, उसको तो wife का permission नहीं लगेगा, right? So these are things that obstruct human right. We are ignoring these factors because we are being cultural relativists. We think that okay, as much as we can ignore or try and understand these ideologies with the cultural perspective, we should try to ignore it. But should we? Is it not coming in the dignity of females, in the freedom of females to live in with their own choices? Then there are communities in Kenya and Tanzania, they think that girls should not have the right to education, they should stay at home and do the pastoralist activities, the domestic chores. This is wrong. Then homosexuality, in many African countries, homosexuality is still they believe that it's illegal or it is not natural, and they put them under detention or in prison. So we need to make a very fine balance as to where the human rights should be respected irrespective of cultural relativism. That means cultural relativism आपको कहाँ तक practice करना है, you need to create a fine balance, and for that you can write in the conclusion that you can come out with certain harm test principle kind of a thing. What is a harm test principle? In a harm test principle, you believe that when there are when reasonable person from different cultural background agree that certain institutions or cultural practices cause harm, then moral neutrality of cultural relativism must be suspended. What is it saying? For example, you take a good sample of 1,000 people from different cultures, right? Western, non-Western, African, tribal, different cultures, and then you ask every person the same thing. For example, whether it is female genital mutilation. How many believe that female genital mutilation is good? And how many believe that female genital mutilation is bad? Based on that, you come to a perspective, okay, if like more than 900 people across different cultures believe that no, female genital mutilation causes harm to female. Harm kya hai? What is the definition of harm here? Which causes death, which causes pain, which causes any kind of a disability or loss of freedom or pleasure to any section of society. That means it is causing harm. If you are not given the right to get educated, it is taking away your freedom or pleasure of your choice, your dignity, your awareness. So you can take out these kind of principles to believe that okay, I'm not thinking from a cultural perspective, but I'm thinking from a very scientific perspective. Is this good for that section of society? Well, it is not. Female genital mutilation is not, because it is inflicting pain on women. It is taking away the dignity of women. So hence then we should believe that now cultural relativism should not be there. We should openly criticize this thing because this is wrong. This is inflicting pain. This is causing harm not only physically but also mentally to the females, right? So with these kind of harm test principle, you can say that we can bring in a fine balance between human rights and cultural relativism. So you can conclude by saying that though these two terms are linked with a fine thread, but they need to have we can take out principles like harm test principle where we can find a fine balance between the two, right? ऐसे करके you can just conclude. And see, I have put in a lot of material for you here. You need to just quote it, like female genital mutilation, it is religious versus female rights. You can just quote it as an example. Homosexuality in Uganda, you don't need to explain what is homosexuality. That I've just made you that I've just explained you for your understanding, but you have to just write it in the pointers that I have written it. So maybe this whole thing would be more than 150 words, it could be 200 words or so, but then you can just try and write these examples, and you don't need to explain them, so then it will come in 150 words, right? So I hope you have clear understanding of how to write an answer for human rights and cultural relativism. You can start off with a definition, then quote both the perspective, how it violates, how it protects, and then the conclusion. So guys, I hope you have liked this new initiative by me. If any doubt you have, please post in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer. And guys, please do support. Yeah, I'm thinking of coming with new initiatives, which I will come with the shorts initiative also. So if you do not support me, then it will become very difficult for me. Or this weekly answer writing we'll do once a week, as it is weekly. So we'll today though it's Thursday, but let's fix it for Saturday or a Thursday. I'll just decide. So next video next week, right? So you can post in the comment section any specific question from a PYQ if you want me to address. I'll be happy to see your suggestions also, and we can take those questions also. So please make it an interactive session. Please post your comments after every video. I will be happy to know what you are thinking with this initiative or with the lectures, right? It's important for me also. So guys, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.